Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to express my great pleasure to be part of this conference, and I want to say welcome to everyone who is here in this room today. Let me introduce myself first. I'm HATİCE. I'm an EFL teacher, and I currently work in an Anatolian high school located in Batman. Here on the cover page of this presentation, you see the names of two different schools, because last year I was working in a primary school, and actually I conducted my study in that primary school. That's why there are the names of two different schools. And the name of my presentation is From Coffee Shops to Superhero ID Cards, Introducing Linguistic Landscapes in a Fun and Creative Way to Foster Speaking Skill. I want to talk about the outline of my presentation. Throughout my speech, I'm going to talk about the target group, give some specific information about target group, the problem statement, the rationale of this study, the aim of this study, the methodology I used, what I have found, and I will give the implications. So I worked with 4th grade students in this study. Their age level was 10, and according to CFR, their level were between A1 and A2. We had two different outcomes because I conducted two different lessons in the study. Students will be able to recognize simple words and phrases about foods and drinks, and students will be able to recognize information about other people. This study is mainly about the integration of linguistic landscapes into language teaching to develop their language skills. So what are linguistic landscapes? Do you have any idea, or have you ever heard this term before? No one?
Just like a sign road?
Yes, okay. The definition is, it is the study of languages in their written form in the public space. Actually, linguistic landscapes refers to all semiotic signs in public space, which includes notice boards, billboards, window shops, T-shirts, tattoos, traffic signs, logos, posters. However, despite the fact that we are widely surrounded by the English language in our daily life and environment, these great tools are still to be effectively integrated into educational settings. So why should we use linguistic landscapes in language teaching? The use of linguistic landscapes as materials can be particularly useful because they are everywhere. Since the English is the global language and it's lingua franca, and they generally reflect sociocultural and linguistic diversity of a community. How do they reflect sociocultural and linguistic diversity? When you go into a community, when you see more than one language in public space, it gives you an idea that this community is a multicultural community. They exemplify symbols and signs featuring language play, and they provide quotidian examples of the presence of English language in non-English settings. Sometimes we can even see some English titles, even in the kebab restaurants. The aim of this study is to raise students' awareness of the language that surrounds them and familiarize them with linguistic landscapes in a fun and creative way, and foster their speaking skills, actually the production skills. In this study, I benefited from action research under qualitative approach. My participants were 10 4th grade students. Actually, I had 20 students, but due to the pandemic, we used to divide our classrooms into two different groups, and on a purpose, I worked with the groups whose levels were higher. And I collected my data by field notes, peer observations. I asked two of my colleagues to come to my classroom and observe my lesson and do the video recordings. I interviewed with some of the students, and I used student products, and I analyzed my data by thematic analysis. I provided my findings under the emerging themes. So, lesson 1, as I previously mentioned, I conducted two different lessons. Lesson 1 was about coffee shops. Why coffee shops? Because they are everywhere and they are one of the richest places which displays linguistic landscapes. When you go into a coffee shop, you can see English on the walls, on the menu, on cups, on napkins, tissue paper. So that's why. I specified some target vocabulary and I provided them during my lesson. Some of the target vocabularies were takeaway, tall, medium, short, coffee shop, steamed milk, milk foam, napkin, coffee cups, and challenge. I started my lesson with some warm-up questions in order to make students familiar with the topic. Some of the warm-up questions were, what color is the coffee? Do you like the smell of coffee? Have you ever seen coffee beans? Do you know what is coffee bean? Do you know how coffee grows? And I showed them a video on YouTube about how coffee is made. Do you know the countries grow coffee? Can you name 3 kinds of coffees? And after asking this question, I showed them a video about a recipe of a famous coffee, and I told them that this coffee was really popular during the pandemic when everyone was in the quarantine. They were making this coffee and they were posting the videos on their social media accounts to be part of challenge. At that time, I provided them the word challenge. And I asked them if they know any coffee shops in our town. What are their names? Have you ever been to a coffee shop with your family? Because it's really likely even for the children to be in a coffee shop in their lives, because coffee shops in Turkey, they do not only serve coffee, but also food. So in Starbucks or in other coffee shops, you can see families. The second part was visual analysis. This is a photo of a famous coffee shop in our town. I took this photo and I used it for language analysis. I asked them the name of the coffee shop. This is a funny question because the name is already coffee shop. What colors do you see? Is it a small or big coffee shop? At what time is it opened and closed? I asked this question because there is a board in front of the coffee shop and the closure and opening times are written. And what is written on the door? There's a slogan, good coffee, good job, and they see the takeaway sign. At that time, I explained the meaning of that word. And I showed them the menu, asked, what is this? Which coffees do you see on the menu? Have you heard the names of these coffees before? And I asked the ingredients of the coffees because on the cups they see the ingredients and they were supposed to use there are form of the language. I showed them the photo of cups. Are these coffee cups the same size or different? Which one is short? Which one is medium? Which one is tall? And I showed the tissue papers and coffee cups pictures together because they reflect some English on them, which is written on these coffee cups and napkins. Which coffee cup did you like most? And after visual analysis, we had 2 different bridging activities. Bridging activity 1 was about designing coffee cups and napkins. I told my students that how they would design napkins and coffee cups if they owned a coffee shop, and they made the design. Here you can see some of the works of my students. They were really creative. One of the students wrote the type of coffees on the tissue paper. It's funny o'clock, be amazing, very delicious. The other students wrote the target vocabulary that he learned. And Ross coffee shops, and you see the cups. And we had another bridging activity. It was about acting out. One of the students role-played the owner of the coffee shop, and the other student role-played the customer, and they used their own designed cups and napkins in this role-play activity. They were supposed to use some phrases like, how much is latte? Can I take tall espresso? Here you are. Do you want Americano? And the second lesson was about ID cards. I chose this topic because everybody has an ID card, and the former Turkish ID cards were monolingual, which was only English, but the new ID cards with the chips, they are bilingual, both English and Turkish are written. And this lesson has a connection with social sciences lesson in the curriculum of 4th grade students. They learn in social science lesson, they learn information about passports, driving license, and ID cards. Again, I specified the target vocabulary. They already know the meaning of these words, the Turkish meaning of these words from their social science lessons, so we learned the English versions: issue date, expiry date, valid until, issued by, serial number, sex, gender, ID number, and signature. I started with starter questions as a warm-up. What's an ID card? Do you have an ID card? What can you do with your ID card, and what kind of information do you have on your ID card? And we had visual analysis. In this part, I showed ID cards from different countries to my students, and I asked them to analyze the language. Which country is this ID card? Belongs to a man or woman? What is her name? And here I asked, what is the meaning of this sign, donor? I asked about birth date and issue date, when will it expire, and I asked them, do you see any extra information? Because on this ID card is from Nigeria, and there's an information about height, which we don't have on Turkish ID cards. This was interesting. And I asked my students if this man can use his ID card for shopping, because behind there is a logo of MasterCard, which means this ID card can also be used as credit card. We had, at the end of the lesson, we had 2 bridging activities. Bridging activity one was about peer work interview. Before coming to this lesson, I asked my students to bring their ID cards to the classroom, and when they were entering the classroom, they were showing their ID cards to me like a password. And this is a basic pair work activity. Students paired up and they asked questions to their partners in order to get the information on their partner's ID card. And they were supposed to ask questions: what's your father's name? What's your mother's name? What's your nationality? And after getting the information of their partners, they presented their findings in full sentence forms. And we had the second bridging activity. It was about designing superhero ID cards. My students chose their favorite superheroes, and they designed their superheroes ID cards as an art and craft activity. And I told my students that they were free to add any kind of extra information to their superheroes ID cards after they colored. And after finishing, they presented their superheroes ID cards to the classroom. Here we see some works of my students. This is Hulk's ID cards. When we look at this ID card, we see that Hulk is living in the future. Yes. And I asked about the gender, and my students said he wanted Hulk to be male and female at the same time. Okay, this is Hulk's signature and superpowers: super jumping, very, very fast running, and very, very big feet. This is Elsa's ID card. My student gave her surname to Elsa. Okay, and superpowers, freezing, swimming, changing colors, and Elsa has Turkish ID cards, document numbers. This is Batman's ID card. I like this ID card because it's creative. Surname Bat, and father name Birdman, mother name Rabbitman, nationality Bat's country, and the signature is a bat. Yes, superpowers: fly, throwing bat. This is Deadpool's ID card. Deadpool is Turkish, we learned that. And okay, it is endless, this ID card. And he said that Deadpool existed since the beginning of the universe. Here we see some Turkish words. Okay, so mainly three themes emerged after I analyzed my data. First of all, it increased, using linguistic landscapes increased student participation. Why it increased? Because it motivated students. One of the students said, I want every lesson to be like this. I still keep my works. There was an element of fun in this lesson. Another student stated, the lesson was so fun. We designed our own cups and napkins to role play. I enjoyed a lot. It encouraged students to use linguistic landscapes to produce the language because the materials were authentic from daily life. One of the observer teachers said, during the course, students were focused on what they were doing, and it was entertaining for them since the materials were from daily life. Students learned new vocabularies and phrases. One of the students said, we learned many new words from visuals and design products. For me, it made it easier to speak English, and it raised awareness of the language around. Observer teacher said the lesson was effective in terms of using English language, and it was related to daily life too. As a teacher, I also enjoyed all the activities. By this project, students also could see there are language using around them in different areas and places, and they realize it. And another student said, whenever I see an English words in shops, I remember our lesson. So we can say that benefiting linguistic landscapes in English lessons provides an authentic means of communication, and it helps students aware of the languages outside the classroom. Linguistic landscape can be used for different grade levels in language teaching by designing appropriate activities. Even these activities can be used for middle school and high school students. Students can also be asked to bring examples of linguistic landscapes in their environment to the classroom. We are conducting another project about UNESCO's Sustainable Development Goals, about Goal 5, which is about gender equality, and I asked my high school students to analyze the clothes, what is written on the clothes. But we do this analysis, we classified boys and girls' clothes and what is written on them. Yes, thank you for listening to me.